What's going on, fight fans? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of the Tea Time Show. My name is Tanira Nathan, MCT. To you, I am known. And on today's show, the champ, Justin Van Heerden. Welcome, my brother.
Welcome myself to the show. The champ is here. All jokes aside, stoked to be here. I'm happy that you're doing these again. And obviously, I'm stoked that I'm on the show and get to be part of it.
Hey, man, I tell you what, when I had Diego on from the first episode, you were the first person to message me and say, get me on now. And 9 months later, 9 months later, we finally make it happen. Look, listen, let's get straight into things. Eternal 73 coming up this weekend. Obviously, the biggest card. Well, let's face it, it's the biggest weekend in combat sports history. You yourself were meant to be headlining that card. What happened?
Yeah. Obviously, I was meant to headline in the main event against Kickboxer Rod, as they call him. Yeah, so during a sparring session, it's probably like the fourth or fifth round of the day. So it's already quite stuck in. It wasn't like it was just, the first round of the day or anything like that. I just was moving around with Colby. We were just getting some good work in and kind of threw a front kick the same time that he threw a kick himself. And in some weird way, the top of my foot just smashed into his kneecap and shattered my foot. So initially I we both felt the impact, and, from the look on his face, I could tell that he sort of felt like the impact on his knee and was like, oh, that was bad. So I sat down for a second. I was like, oh, wait, let's just see. Maybe it was just the nerve, or maybe something, I don't know. Maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. But even though I was pretty confident I'd broken it, went to get back up and move around again. And I couldn't take a step on it. I couldn't step on it. I couldn't move. And then Joe's like, all right, come on, let's get off the mat. And we start, chucked ice on it. And then we started talking about, okay, let's go get a scan immediately and find out what's going on. So broke my second metatarsal break, and obviously the bone was sitting shattered, like pointing up. So they had to, numb the area, reset the bone back down, get it back in line. And then initially, so this happened probably about a month ago now. It's like just coming up on a month. So obviously at first I had to keep it quiet. We weren't sure what the go was going to be yet. And I think obviously Cam and that wanted time to be able to see if they could salvage something for the fight, all that sort of stuff. And for me, it was just working out, am I going to need surgery? Am I going to need, is this, what are we going to do to remedy this and sort of fix this? So thankfully, through the connections I have and the people I'm surrounded with, I have access to some pretty intellectual individuals in most sort of fields. So, through some of those connections, I was able to get an opinion from some top sports surgeons that deal with professional athletes. And collectively, the consensus was not to do surgery, because putting a plate in and screws and stuff like that for this type of break, and especially with how it was reset and lined up again, it would be more detrimental in the long run. Yeah, so it's just been a case of, staying off it for the most part for those first couple of weeks especially, and then just focusing on, recovering and working around it. So right now, I'm pretty much like next week, I start my sort of more specialized rehab build up around it, just to sort of strengthen the muscles and stuff around it a bit more. Because obviously the actual foot itself, you're just kind of letting that sit and heal. But, my ankle, my calf, even just my other leg, like those things are all compensating for that injured part, because you have to be a bit more careful with how you're moving around, and you're using sort of different things to stabilize yourself when you're walking, getting around, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, where it's at now, at the absolute latest, probably early March, I'll be like fully back to be able to do everything. We're talking like grappling, wrestling, being able to explode off the foot, jump, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we're on track. So, obviously there's a March card, which I'll miss out on. I think initially the plan was, let's see how bad the injury is. Is it going to be possible for us to fight in March? And obviously, that would have been ideal so I didn't have to miss out too much, but we'll miss out on that. So I do believe there's a card early May. So that's the focus for me to heal up, get back on track, and fight early May and get my year started.
So the timeline for you to return would be May then, but you can start training again in a month.
The absolute latest. Yeah.
Really? Wow. Okay. He must have superhuman bones or something, or Colby wasn't defending properly. We'll definitely get to him later, much to the pleasure of Craig Jones. But look, you're out. You were out. That got announced, what, 2-3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. In steps Kakembo, and now Rod's out. Now, you were the first one privy to this information.
Yeah, I got told pretty well straight away. So I do believe initially the actual injury, as Rod said when he spoke about it, it happened like last week Friday. And then obviously they were trying to see what's possible. is it is it bad, or, can they work around it? And then obviously, earlier this week, I did recorded an episode with the Eternal podcast, Insiders podcast. And then, Luke and I did that.
Yeah.
And then, probably like half an hour after we did it, my phone rings and it's Cam O'Neill telling me that Rod's out of the fight. And, how crazy the sort of thing works out. So, that's obviously an insane sort of outcome in itself, because now the sort of the backup main event, or the salvaged main event, has fallen through. And credit to like both those guys for even getting that to be, make that happen. Like Rod obviously was preparing for me, couldn't then make a last minute drop to bantamweight. So then they were trying to find opponents, and ended up working out that him and Kikembo were going to fight. And credit to Kikembo, like stepping up, trying to fight someone like Rod, who's in a lofty position to try and, set himself up quite nicely. Because he goes out, if this fight happened, he goes out there, starches Rod, he's fighting me for the belt. Like that's, so just like that. So that's a credit to Rod too, man. Not being wanting to sit there and wait, because he could have just kicked back on, nah, that's right, don't worry about it, I'll wait. And then, they match us up when I'm healed. But yeah, it's just crazy how this game is, man. It's unforgivable, because had I not got injured, my phone would have rang earlier this week, and I would have got a phone call saying, or I would have walked in the gym to Joe saying, we're not fighting this weekend.
Yes. Yeah, I often think that you guys have the toughest job in the world, and at the same time, I would not want to be a promoter. They got a tough job, old Cam and Ben, but look, they make it happen. This new main event, Steve and Hirai, I think it is. I don't know too much about the other guy, but what's your analysis on Steven Erceg versus Hirai in the main event?
Steven Erceg, he could sit back, sit pretty, and wait for the Contender Series to start. He didn't need to fight. He's fighting someone, and, credit to Cam and Ben for flying over an opponent from Japan. So, because obviously hard to match that guy in this region. And looking into the fight, and looking into, Sachiro a bit, and the fights he's had, he hasn't really come up to any opposition so far in his career. I mean, he's 4-1, but he hasn't fought anyone that's at the caliber or of a world-class level such as Steven Erceg.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic comes together, because, Erceg's a beast, man. He's definitely world-class. He's beaten some high-level people. He's beaten the Cody Haddons. He's beaten the Shannon Rosses. He's beaten, some top-caliber people. And now, he's fighting a guy who's hungry, coming over from Japan, fighting on Eternal, looking to make a statement in his own right, because it sets him up quite nicely. He goes out there, beats Erceg. He puts himself in a pretty damn good position. You're 5-1 in MMA, and you just beat the number one flyweight in the region.
Yeah, definitely. The card itself, I when they originally stacked the card, I was like, man, I have to be there for this one. This one is one that you can't miss. As the fight started to fall off, it still holds its weight, because, like you said, Stephen, he's a household name in Perth. I mean, he was on the verge. Well, he was scheduled for the Contender Series, didn't happen, and like you said, he's taking a risk. But hopefully, and I can make predictions because I won't be there, but hopefully it'll pay off for him, especially in front of his home crowd in Perth. Look, another fight on the card in your division versus your good old mate Alan Philpott. In consideration with your return, if Rod's not ready by May when you are, will you move on to someone else? For example, let's say you go to Cam and say, I want to fight the winner of Abdallah, or I want to fight Kikembo, or even give Philpott a rematch if he can go out there and make a statement in Perth. What are your thoughts upon your return, and specifically into this match?
Fight between Rod and Kikembo falling through kind of has thrown a massive spanner in the works. So regardless, I guess for the most part now, Rod, the fight with Rod's kind of off the table now, because, well,
really,
I'm real big on the fact that you got to make yourself undeniable, and you got to go out there and earn it and do your thing and get after it. I did that. I got to hold these guys to the same standard. It's real simple. If Abdallah goes out this weekend, wins, it's simple. I'm fighting him in May and defending my belt. He deserves it. Dude's on a tear. He's like, I can't sit there and expect that dude to then wait and sit around, maybe have to take another fight. He's gone out there, he's beaten a bunch of good guys. He'd be coming off the Josh Kuhn win. He'd be coming off win over Alan Philpott. He's beat Jesse Medina, so he's beaten some notable dudes in the region. So it makes sense for me to defend my belt against him, especially if he goes out there and puts on like a, incredible performance and gets a finish. For the only way it works out in a different capacity, if Alan wins, that'd be, good for him to get a win over someone like Abdallah, and that's obviously, propels you forward in a sense, but that's still not enough for a title shot. If Alan wins, he's got to go out and get another win. So if you go out there, get a win, especially a finish, call someone out for March, whether that's Costa, whether that's Alavi, whether that's Dimps, because those guys were scheduled to fight and that fight fell through as well. You got to go out there, get another win. If you're coming off 2 back-to-back wins, let's make it happen in May. We could run it back. It's going to be a big fight. It's going to sell out. Last time we fought, we're in the Gold Coast. That entire crowd was filled with Josh Kuhn fans, my fans, and Phil Potts fans. Like we had that place going off its head. So, that fight would be, that from a sort of promoter side of view, point of view, it sells itself. There's going to be back and forth in the lead up again, between Alan and I. It's sort of, it's a win-win for everyone involved, I guess. But yeah, looking at this fight on the weekend, man, it's just going to depend on who wins. And then if obviously how the Rod fight came together, he put himself in a position where he could step up and challenge me at featherweight. And then for myself, I want that fight back, so it makes sense. We threw it together. It hasn't happened, depending on when Rod's healed and what happens. Obviously I'm going to be good to go in May. So, he might be good to go at the same time, but should someone that's at bantamweight who might be deserving of a title fight or might be ready to step up and fight Rod, should they miss out? Should they wait until after May to be able to fight? It's hard. Obviously, like I'll leave that sort of stuff to Joe and my management team and everyone like that. So, I'll show up. There's the board in the gym at Freestyle. It's got my name there. It's got everyone's names there. I'll just rock up one day, see a name next to it and go, cool, easy. That's what we're doing. Just like doesn't matter who it is, So wow. I have no issue with fighting any of these guys. It's not like, I'll fight. Like, I think people might misunderstand sometimes that, there's no such thing as not wanting to fight anyone. It's just a case of it's got to make sense. And sometimes that could mean a simple thing such as, the dates just got to work out for both parties involved. And then it can go even deeper than that. And like I'm saying with Phil Pot, you can't win one fight coming off 3 back-to-back losses in MMA and then want to fight for a title, which is not realistic.
To be honest, I can't see Phil Pot losing this weekend. I think there's too much at stake. And as good as Abdallah is, and he is fantastic, Phil Pot will be going into this fight with the mentality, I cannot lose this. I can't at all costs. You can't go 0-3 in the featherweight division when it's stacked as it is, because we were all expecting big things from Ellen, and still are. He's incredible, and even in those fights with yourself and Diego, he looked great in the first couple of rounds until you guys took his back, and it's almost poetic justice that you and Diego finished him the exact same way and then end up fighting for the title. But you look at a guy where he's got his back up against the wall. I certainly think he'll be prepared this week, and he can't afford to lose.
100%. And I'm leaning towards him to win this fight, which I think I never thought I'd be sitting here breaking down a fight card and looking at one of his fights going, I think this guy's going to win.
I want him to win.
I think obviously both guys can win, both guys can capitalize, both guys super talented. But I just believe that Alan's experience, he's a lot more well-rounded. He's got more ways to win and to capitalize. And he's got, I saw him talking about the fight with myself, the fight with Diego. And he said, when it came to the fight with me, he was talking about he was too focused on the game plan and, didn't allow himself to make the sort of changes on the fly and make the adjustments to kind of have a bit of fun in there and, get after it a little bit. Whereas with Diego, he was a bit too relaxed, too much in the flow of things and straight away from the game plan, jumps for a guillotine, gets caught, gets finished. So if Alan can find that happy medium where he needs to be, he's going to win. And it's not an easy task. And Abdullah's obviously very dangerous. He's got lots of good tools, lots of good knees, elbows, kicks, punches. But Alan's a great striker as well. The thing that's going to decide this on, especially the exchanges on the feet, is the distance and how it's used. Both guys need it, they rely on fighting off the back foot. Alan likes to sit back, wait for you to go, then he's going to counter and he's going to piece you up with 3, 4, 5 punch combinations. Abdallah is going to stay on the end of his punches, use his long reach, and he just wants to sit back and just pick you apart. He doesn't need to come into your range. He can sit there and tee off on you and not get hit. He's just using his range and his natural gifts that he has. Now, for Alan to try and counter-strike with Abdallah, not realistic based on the range and the height and the differences that we have there. If he pushes the pace, comes forward, mixes in the striking with the grappling, wears on him a little bit, uses that against the cage, stuff like that, I think it's going to be a pretty good night for him in there, and he'll be able to get the wins. As I said, I'm big fan of both guys' skill sets. Both guys obviously dangerous, can go in there and light up one another, or definitely get the win. But I'm definitely leaning towards Allen. I just think his experience and his ability to mix it in is just gonna lead to him getting a victory. If you look back to that fight with Diego, up until that mistake with the guillotine, he was piecing him up on the feet. He was out wrestling him, out grappling him. It's just making it look easy. So, does Abdullah have the same level of wrestling and grappling as Diego? Absolutely not. Not even close. It's not close.
That's a good point. No, it isn't. And you kind of saw that with when Diego fought Abdallah, I think it was back at Eternal 63. Coming to the grappling, Diego was just miles and miles ahead. And although Abdallah's grown since then, and this is the thing, if you're listening, we're not writing you off. We're just saying, looking at the landscape of this fight, and you take into consideration the stakes are at an all-time high for Philpott. If he does stick to the game plan and do his best to kind of keep the fight standing with Abdallah, then he should be okay.
At the end of the day, if this needs to be a kickboxing fight, either guy can win. It's not like Allen's out of the fight if it's a kickboxing fight. Like, he can sit there and outstrike.
No.
Anyone if he gets in the flow of things. Like we talked about, if he gets into that happy medium in between having fun and sticking to the game plan and listening to those experienced guys that he has around him, he can go out and do work, man. The guy's dangerous. Like, you don't get to 50 MMA fights without, picking up all the skills and stuff that you need to be able to find success and find wins in this game. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. But at the end of the day, man, come out there, put on a show, prove me wrong. Either one of these guys, take it for yourself. You have to do something. You can't, if we're tuning in watching this fight and we're sitting here and it's a close split decision either way, and we're like, Allen's like, his team and his people and his supporters are like, no, we think he won. And then Abdullah's like, no, he think he won. And we don't really know. No one wants that at the end of the day. So come out there, take it, go for it, make it that no one can deny you. And then, so that I have to sit there, watch the fight the next day or that night or whatever, the next day, I'm going to sit there, jump on the old Instagram and be like, looks like we're fighting in May. That's what I want. That's what I expect.
Done. Totally. And I think you're in a strong position of power in the sense that the featherweight division, with the exception of maybe the lightweight division, I would even say more so your weight class, you sit atop the featherweight division, and you do have that power to kind of say, all right, show me something and I'll give you a title shot. Staying on this division, that's definitely the feature bout I'm looking forward to with Beata and Philpott. Is there a case for Kikembo to step in and fight you straight away, or did you need to see more from him?
That's the person in this whole situation right now who I kind of like feel a bit bad for, that he's missing out, because he's a young, talented dude, man. I like that kid, and he's obviously got a great skill set, and it would have been interesting to see how this fight with him and Rod played out. So I don't know, like, what you do. Potentially, here's what happens. You go, if Abdallah wins, you put me and Abdallah together for May. Potentially on that same card, you do Kikembo and someone. You do that. Maybe you throw together Kikembo and Diego. I don't know. Maybe you throw together Kikembo and Alavi. Something like that. You throw a match up there. You have them on the same card, and then he goes out there and gets a win. It puts him in a pretty good spot, It puts him in a pretty good spot. He's on a win streak, and especially if he beats someone like if he goes out there fights someone like Alavi and smokes him, outside of the loss to me, Alavi's not really, he's not really been shown any adversity outside of that fight, and he's been on a tear, and he's a dangerous dude. So maybe if something like that, then you can talk about him fighting, the winner of myself and whoever I'm fighting. Maybe
there's so much you can do, can't you?
The simple solution comes if Philpott wins. If Philpott wins, Kikembo's going to be in shape and all good already. If Allen comes out, he's all good, no injuries. Book those two for March. Let's scrap it out and let's see who gets the fight in May. Well,
the champ has spoken. It's a thing of beauty when you look at your division. There's so many options, and not that you're going to kick back and relax, but you can. Like I said, you're in that position where you can kind of say, all right, I want that guy. He's shown me something, or that's a good matchup. But I think your mentality especially throughout last year, there was no hesitation to fighting anyone. I want to talk about last year. Eternal 70, you originally matched with Jack for his featherweight strap. He gets pulled up to the UFC, and then steps Khan Offley. Now, why didn't that fight come to fruition?
So basically, obviously, so the fight with Jack got put, and even when it got put together, people don't know this, I can speak about this now, but so Jack and I were actually talking to each other when after I beat Alavi, he messaged me, congratulated me on my performance in my fight. And he's like, all right, cool, let's book it, let's do it. But was very upfront with me and said, my management's telling me that the Contender Series is still happening. Here's the rough date that they're saying. So, but like, you know what? Like you've earned your spot. Let's book this fight. Let's get after it. If I don't get the Contender Series call up, we're fighting. We're putting it all. No, I'm putting everything on the line. You're putting it on the line. Where it's a massive fight for Australian MMA. So I was like, yeah, bet. But at the same time, it was kind of like knowing, okay, potentially the Contender Series thing's still happening. So when they announced that that the signings happened and he's going on Contender Series, I wasn't surprised. I was like, I knew that was potentially going to happen. Obviously, initially I was a little bit bummed that I wasn't getting to fight him, because obviously that's a fight that was meant to happen previously, and it was so much build up for it, and it would have just been a massive fight for Aussie MMA. But am I like stoked? Was I stoked that the guy got the call up? 100%, because he worked hard to get there. He's established himself in that position and went after it. And the fact that he was willing to potentially put his spot on the line to book a fight with me, speaks to him in a sense as well. Like you're in line to be next up for like a call up or Contender Series or something like that, and you're willing to put that on the line to fight, the next up and coming dude or the dangerous person that's in front of you. So the whole situation was just a cool one to sort of see how it all played out. But then obviously, Khan Offley, close training partner with Jack Jenkins, so he gets offered the fight, steps in camp, going through the motions, and just it wasn't even like a crazy thing. It was just like the first round of a meat grinder session that I was doing on a Wednesday, broke my ribs, broke a rib, tore my intercostal. So I couldn't get it checked initially, and talked to Joe initially, like straight off the bat, like when it happened, when I was on my way, like when I was sort of waiting to get the scans and stuff done. And we were all under the same consensus. If it's just the intercostal, we're still fighting, because, we can manage that. In the lead up to the Alavi fight, like at the start of the camp, I tore my intercostal. You just work around it. Like it sucks. You pretty much, you loosen up, you train. Afterwards, it just hurts and you deal with it. You just go, next day, you just do it again. So you're kind of like, whatever. You're still going to, you're still going to be able to fight. It's not like it sucks, but it's not going to be able to, one of those things I can't fight. But then we were sort of, okay, if the rib's broken, then we can't fight, because that, that changes things. That changes the ability to go out there and fight, because, Khan's a big, thick, powerful sort of featherweight. If I got broken ribs, he kicks me in the ribs, my ribs break more, I puncture a lung or some shit. Now we're talking about not just me missing out for an extended period of time. Now we're talking about potential chance, some more serious repercussions come out of that. So as frustrating as it was, we sat down and made a decision when we found out the ribs were broken as well. We pulled the fight. So that was annoying. And that was probably, outside of now with my foot, like these are the only 2 times I've had to pull out of a fight ever. And it's, obviously it sucks. And I've been in the other end of that situation where I've had to, miss out because my opponent's gotten injured and stuff like that. So, it's frustrating. It's hard. It's a frustrating situation. So initially I straight away when I had, the fight fell through, I contacted Khan and was like, sorry, man, like if there's any way that I could fight, I would be there. I understand the position you're in. I know what it's like to be in that position, and I was real upfront about it. Like it's just shit. It's a shitty outcome for everyone. It's a shitty outcome for the promotion. It's a shitty outcome for me, for him, for everyone. But then, so that fight fell through. And to my understanding, he got offered Rod Costa. Rod Costa had just fought at bantamweight not too long before that, like a couple of weeks before. So at this point, it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the fight was meant to happen or some shit. So
is this in place of yourself?
So, and then
interesting. Okay.
As it came out after the fact, Khan said no. Said, I've already fought that guy. Doesn't, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the fight fell through. And then that's obviously, on the night when the actual event took place, that doubleheader weekend, on that Saturday night, when we had Alan and Diego fighting, you yourself were talking about on the broadcast, and everyone was made privy to this information. It was the winner of this fight fights for a featherweight title. I knew my place was solidified and my spot was fine. I knew I earned my place and I wasn't going to miss out on fighting for the belt. But when I heard that, I kind of had an inkling, but then when I heard that being said, I was like, I bet. So I'm fighting one of these guys. Cool. And then, that's how we end up making that fight happen between me and Diego, because he went out there, got the win, and that's how that fight got thrown together. So that's it. So basically, in the scheme of things, the fight with Khan and I only got put together because it was a case of right place, right time. You're Jack's teammate. Jack's gone to
Yes.
contender series. You happen to be training and getting, helping him prepare and stuff like that, so he can throw it together.
Yeah.
But outside of that, what has Khan done on Eternal to warrant a title shot? He fought Rod Costa and won a decision or a split decision in a fight that a lot of people don't think he won. Well, I don't think he won that fight. I was there on the night.
Okay.
Like, I watched it.
Yep.
But it got put on a win on your record. Since then, he's fought a few other times. I get it. The guy was on a 6-fight win streak or whatever. I think he's on a 6-fight win streak now or some shit. But outside of like last year, he fought twice. But outside of that, like he's fought once a year, maybe once every 1 or 2 years. Like I fought 4 times in 10 months. So I don't know. It's a weird situation. I kind of I do feel bad that the guy thought that our fight being made, and then obviously he's under the impression that I'm going to recover from injury and they're going to rebook the fight. I can get his point of view on where that all comes from, but at the end of the day, like I've spoken about, I ain't the promoter, man. I'm the guy that fights. I just show up and fight. They could tell me I'm fighting King Kong this date, this time. I'm gonna be there. So I'm fighting. Cool.
Yeah. Well, I think that was where the confusion came in, and without obviously going into too much detail, when the fight between you and Rod got announced which was meant to be this weekend, it only took one comment on the great platform war, which is social media, to spark a huge conversation of this person's running from that person, this person's avoiding this person. And I think you sent me the post straight away and you said, get your tea ready, have a read of this. And, not to go into too much detail, certainly my opinion is that no one's running from anyone. I think the way that you describe it is that it was right place, right time, and injury happened, and now it's not the right place nor the right time. So there's a lot of moving parts, and as each card passes, it's clear. I mean, look, Khan's fighting this week against one of your teammates, against Jarrett. So it's clear that now no one's running from anyone, and in your division, most of you guys are active. But it was just interesting to obviously hear the story from your side, and comparing that with the speculation of the fight analysts, also known as the general public. So it's always an entertaining read. Obviously, you're right at the forefront of that. You mentioned Diego, the rematch with Diego. 100%. There was a bit of a storyline there, wasn't there? You fought early in your careers, then you became teammates, then you started training at the same gym, then you went to freestyle. Now, I would be amiss in this episode if I didn't ask you, why did you leave South?
Basically, yes. Well,
because I'm a big fan. I love Paul, I love Uncle Des, love Diego
as well.
But at the end of the day,
what happened was, so obviously, Diego and I fought, and then after we fought, I lost, and I was pretty gutted about the fact that I lost. It was my second pro fight, and it was just like I was in sort of a bit of limbo, and I kind of was like, okay, well, what's the next step? Like, what am I going to do? And then I'd met Pasha, and I sort of had a conversation with him, and we rolled and grappled and whatever. And I was like, and then he said to me, he's like, if you ever come down to Brisbane, come train. And then I was sort of sitting there teeing up what I need to do, what I think is the move. And I just went, fuck it. And I made the decision, and I just moved down there, and I joined Southside, and I was like, all right, let's do it. And obviously I was based there for a couple of years. It became a sort of the place where I felt like I needed to be. And obviously I did some growing while I was there, and I was able to, have a gang of fights under the Southside sort of banner in a sense, and with Pasha and Des in my corner, and Diego in my corner and stuff like that. And we obviously grinded together a fair bit. But then, the fight with Michael Barber got booked in the first instance. And this was like end of 2020. It got thrown together, or like towards the start of 2021 or something like that.
This was Melbourne, wasn't it?
So, that was in Melbourne. Started getting put together and stuff like that. But what happened was, I was talking to Volko and sort of he was in camp, or getting ready for the camp for Holloway, I believe. One of the fights was probably I think it was second fight for Holloway would have been. Yeah, the second fight. And we sort of through a conversation, I put the feelers out and was like, oh, well, could I be a body for that camp? I'm obviously similar height to Max and stuff like that. And I was like, cool. I reached out, and then basically what happened was obviously we had like the lockdowns and COVID, shut down a bunch of shit and all that sort of confusion and chaos, and it wasn't able to happen. But then, Freestyle had their fight team tryouts or whatever you call them or whatever. It was happening over like 2 days. And I was like, yeah. And I was like
an open tryout
at the same time, because I was like I was like already thinking, man, maybe that's where I should, for this next step in my career and for me to get to where I want to get to, maybe that's the place that I need to be in the room. That's the room I need to be in. And that's the coaching I need to be under. And that's not in a negative light to Southside or my coaches that I had there. Like I have a lot of love and admiration for those guys and a lot of respect for my team and people that I was with there. But I just felt like I plateaued out in a sense and was like, I need to be the little fish in a big new pond. Whereas I find it in a weird way, I feel like I got to the point at Southside where I wasn't being challenged in a sense of, I ran out of access of new looks with different sort of high level training partners in a sense. And I was kind of like in limbo a bit. I'm like, well, am I just going to plateau out here skill wise and everything? Am I just going to stay at this point? Or like, how am I going to progress? Because there's only like so far that I can get to without those extra looks, without those sort of, it wasn't even, so that's not even like it's just a lack of access to different training partners that are professional fighters that are there,
absolutely,
that are pursuing this the same way I'm pursuing it. That was the main thing for me. So then, I made the decision to come down for the tryouts or whatever it was. It was like 2 days. I came down, and then at the same time, I was like, all right, I'll go down. I'll get to go to the gym. I'll train. I'll meet people. I'll get to check out the area, because at the time I was like, all right, because if I end up liking this sort of move down there, it's a pretty big thing to do. I got to like the area. I got to like the whole vibe, as not just the gym and that side of things. Came down, did that, and then probably like a week later or maybe a couple of days later or something like that. I think that was, or like the Friday after or something. I got a phone call and they were like, "Yeah, we want you to come and join the team, be part of Freestyle." And I was like, "I bet." But then even initially, I was like, "But is this the right thing?" And I wasn't really set on. I was like, "Man, can I even do this?" And like, do I even really want to leave Southside and do all this sort of stuff? Do I want to take this next step or change things up in such a big way? And then obviously my partner at the time, Sarah, was just like, you need to do this. She's like, this is your passion. This is what you want to do. This is a big step forward for you. She's like, look who you're going to be training with. Look at the coaching that you're going to get. Look at the constant talent that's going to come through the door that you're going to have the opportunity to learn off, work with, et cetera, et cetera. This is going to be this is the place where you need to be. This is the place that arguably, if you had it your way and could go back, this is the place you need to be at from the start. And I was like, you're right. So, made the decision to go, all right, cool. I'm accept that opportunity. Obviously, notified Pasha and the team and stuff like that. It didn't go over well, as you could expect, that I was making this decision to leave.
Well, that was going to be my next question. What was the reaction from Pasha and the team? So you did tell them.
Initially,
you did tell them you were leaving.
It wasn't met with the response that I thought I was going to get. Obviously, there was some disappointment, some frustration.
Yeah,
which is understandable, I guess. From a coaching point of view or sort of something like that, that's you're making a sort of investment into someone as well. So for whatever reason, if they decide to stop competing or if they move for work-related reasons, or I don't know whether they're a professional or not, if you see a student that you have or someone like that make the decision to move on or leave, it's obviously going to be something that you're going to have trouble with, or be like, this pretty shitty sort of thing. You don't want to see any of your students and that people that you invest time and stuff into sort of leave. You want them there. You want them on the mats. You want to continue that sort of seeing that progress, etc. So obviously initially it was probably not met with great enthusiasm and joy that I was leaving. But as it went on, that kind of changed. Obviously Pasha and Des are just two super nice and really sort of straightforward individuals as well. Big hearts. They got a lot of time for anyone.
Yes.
But at the same time, they're straightforward, and sometimes that can come across in like a way where you think that it's meant, it seems like a negative thing or a hurtful thing, but it's not. It's just, but I know that because I've known him for years. So And after a while, I kind of just put it together and I was like, oh,
Yes.
it's not even like disappointment in the fact that I'm leaving the gym. It's just more so disappointment in the fact that I'm not going to be at Southside anymore. Yeah. So eventually it kind of plateaued out
Yes.
and got to the point where it was like, all right, you're doing your thing, but I was still, I still constantly would be checking in because I got a lot of time and effort invested into a lot of the people that were on the mat. So when they're competing in jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, I'm constantly still keeping in touch, being like, you got this happening, you got that happening. And even for Diego up until a certain point until it became like realistic that we might fight again. And even though even with that fight being put together again, there was a lot of stuff got said throughout the lead up to that fight, or narratives got put out there that just weren't realistic. Like Diego and I never not stopped considering him to be a friend of mine. Like I still think he's a friend of mine. I still have a lot of love and admiration and respect for that guy. He and I shared the mats for a significant period of time. We cornered each other for fights. There's a lot that goes into that. I got to see that guy at the highest of highs and at the lowest of lows, and he got to see the same for me. So yeah, across the board, there was a bit of weirdness when I initially first left Southside, but after a while, things kind of, normalized, and it was just like clockwork. Everything was kind of smooth again. And then obviously briefly we got matched to fight. So briefly it was a bit weird because no one wanted to, you don't want to, I guess anyone that's involved in anyone's camp when they're fighting someone else, you don't want to be seen like liaising with the enemy, or, there's that vibe to it, which, is part of it.
Totally.
Territory, but everything's Gucci, man. Like I was actually just talking to Pasha before about some basketball. So yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, even me, I was like, do I even message these guys and wish them luck, or is there going to be some sort of, I didn't know if there was bad blood there. I didn't think there was. Was it awkward? I mean, was it awkward when you look across the cage and you go, oh yeah, there's Pasha, there's Uncle Des, there's my old coaches, there's my old teammate. Is that awkward at all?
I don't even think about it.
I was like, for you on the night.
There's a leading into the fight, like there was more so the only sort of, no, there's no bad blood, but the only thing, like obviously I was a bit frustrated about some things that, like when Diego did the breakdown of Alan and I's fight on the show with you, and I was like, well, what is this bloke even on about? And then he did the breakdown for my fight with Alabi, and I was like, okay. And so he did that for Eternal.
Oh, did he do one for Alabi? Where did he do that one?
Maudsley. So yeah, and which is, okay. And I was,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the promo.
Especially after the fight with Alan, like I called him out in the cage when he was sitting cage side, and I was like, okay, so you say no, or you like decline a fight with me now, fighting like the boogeyman of the division, and you're doing the breakdown for it. Are you kidding? Why didn't you fight him then? So I was a bit like, this is stuff that was a bit weird, but when I was in there and stuff like that, not at all. I wasn't even. Dude, none of that even played in my mind at all. Even while I was like in the fight, as the fight progressed and as it was going through, like I think, people, obviously fighting is such an overwhelming experience, and it is a shock to the system in many ways. But at the same time, for me now, 16 fights into my pro career, 16 fights in, it's not like I just relish in everything. I'm so calm in there. I'm so chill in there. I'm just absorbing everything. Like I'm hearing you guys talk. When you're commentating, I'm hearing my coaches, I'm hearing what they're saying to my opponent. I can hear his breathing. I can, I'm just going through the motions. So there's a few times in there, especially when I took him down in their corner, I could hear Pasha like yelling instructions. There's a few times where I looked up, just gave him like a cheeky smile, winked at Des, I'm out there. I'm listening to Ben Johnson give him some pointers in the stand-up exchanges. But yeah, it wasn't ever a point where I was like, oh fuck, like those are the people that used to corner me and stuff like that. That's my old team. It was, like afterwards, right, when the fight was done, and I was like, there was that moment of I beat Diego, got that win back, but I was like, man, there was that little moment of, man, this kind of sucks a little bit in a way, because I had to go and I had to fight a guy that
true.
I'm considering one of my friends, but also the loss that he's taking, my old coaches are taking as well. And that for a couple minutes at the back, I sat down, I was just thinking about that, and I was just like, that kind of sucks a little bit, that's how this game works, and that's the sport we're in. It's an individual sport when you're in there fighting that whatever time, 15, 25 minutes or whatever it is. But the results of those fights for sure affect you and everyone around you that's invested time and effort into you. You know, it's so the actual performance side of the sport is individual, but everything else it affects a team of people.
And I think that's if you're sitting outside, well, I guess outside the circle, outside the cage, you don't see how much of an effect it has. Obviously, when you win, everything's great, but a loss, you know, especially for Diego, it's certainly not over for Diego. One more win and he's right back in the loop. I mean, it's possible that you guys could have a trilogy fight down the track. But yeah, I can imagine. I just remember being cage side. I'm looking at you two and I'm going, jeez, this is really happening. It's really happening. And for you two, you know each other inside and out. However, I think for yourself, I mean, in hindsight's always 2020. Going to freestyle,
100%
was obviously the
best
right
decision I made for myself as an athlete and in my career. And like I said, you know, like you said, hindsight's 2020. If I could go back to the start of my pro career when I was like, I made the decision that I'm pursuing this sport and I want to be a world champion, 100%, I would have just come to freestyle straight away. You know, knowing what I know now, you know, it was for sure surreal sitting there when you know we're about to walk up. We walked in the middle and we touched gloves, and you know we're about to fight, and there was that moment of like, oh fuck, we're doing it again. Would you have put money on that? Holy, we're doing it again.
Yeah.
And that was cool, and we're doing it for a title. So it's like high stakes, you know, it's on fight path. It's it's just the whole sort of experience for that couple of seconds when you're standing there and, you know, Churchy's giving us the final instructions in the middle of the cage. It was like, man, holy shit, can you believe this is happening? But it was a fun one.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because I'm a big fan. You know, I love both of you guys just as much as each other. And you know what's funny is that before you called him out, we actually did that episode on the show, and you know, it could have saved Cam and Ben a lot of time and just put you two together without either of you having to face a Lavi or Philpott. But I think when you, like you said, when you look back, it was really cool to see you guys go on and get wins over Alavi, go on and get wins over Philpott, and then finally rise to the top. Because that was always my view of the two of you, is that aside from Jack, you guys are always 1 and 2. And it was only a matter of time, especially if the both of you want to get to the UFC. It's impossible to be undefeated, but it's not necessarily about having an undefeated streak. It's who you fight. Right. So for yourself, I mean, you're so experienced now. I mean, you could go on you're on a 3-fight win streak now? You're on a 4-fight win streak. So essentially 2 more wins and you're right there as the champ. And I thought the same for Diego. And that was probably not the recommendation, but just as the landscape played out was, well, you're gonna have to fight Justin again because you're at the top of the food chain. I mean, I know you'd only just lost to Rod. I think you came back and fought Barber. And then you had Alavi and Philpott scheduled. And I was just like, yeah, it's almost inevitable. You guys are going to fight again. And if either of you want to get to that belt or fight Jack again or get to the UFC, you're going to have to go through each other. So it was pretty entertaining, to say the least, watching you guys throw it down inside the cage. Mate, look, listen, moving on to the UFC, again, massive weekend in Perth. Neither of us will unfortunately be there. We'll be watching on TV. How has camp been with Volk? Did you withdraw from camp due to injury, 2-3 weeks ago?
About 3, almost 4 weeks, yeah.
Well, without giving away the game plan, I know you won't, but look, there's no doubt that he's going to go out there and do business on Saturday, isn't he?
That's the plan. And you know, there's a plan in the scheme of things that involves him punching holes in this guy's face. And that's what he's going to look. Yeah, this fight is monumentous. This occasion is so big. You know, Volk's the underdog going into it, like $3.90. I think it's at it now. You know, it's come down a bit from $4.10 or something. So he's a massive underdog coming into the fight, which makes no sense to me. But you know, it's neither here nor there. We're all going to cash in on the wallets. We're all making money. But yeah, like this fight is crazy. I still don't think people are giving this fight the credit of what an occasion this is. You got the number 1 and number 2 guys on the pound for pound. There's 2 guys that are on massive win streaks. Each guy only has 1 loss in MMA. You know, both guys are just absolute monsters and killers, you know, and you look at what Islam did to win his lightweight title. You look at what Volk's done since he's won the belt, defended it, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a crazy sort of fight that's been thrown together. And even though like it is happening, I'm like, holy fuck, I can't believe this is happening. Like, I can't believe this fight is happening. But in saying that, man, I think Volk's gonna I'm very confident that Volk's going to be able to dismantle Islam's game and put him in an uncomfortable position where he's so thrown off and so uncomfortable by the adversity that's presented his way. He's going to make mistakes and he's going to crumble, and Volk's going to put him away late. I feel like a 4th round TKO knockout isn't out of the question for me, because Islam's not really faced much adversity. Like, he got clipped and knocked out early but in terms of when in the other fights where he's, tried to implement his game and do stuff, he hasn't really faced much adversity. The Sarukian fight, Sarukian was able to get up a bunch of times and get back to his feet. But Sarukian's a wrestler and immediately engaged back in the wrestling. Islam reversed it, got on top. So, even in that fight, although Sarukian got to his feet, Islam was never really in any danger of experiencing any adversity. The difference is, at the start of the rounds, at any time when Volk gets back up, shuts down a takedown, etc., for as long as the fight's on the feet at any given point, Volk's going to piece him up. It's going to be bad. He's going to get hit, and he's going to get hit a lot. And he doesn't have the tools and the ability to deal with that. He just doesn't. You see Khabib, you see all these guys talking about, a 3-month camp isn't enough time to prepare for the wrestling and grappling that Islam has. Yeah, well, a 3-month camp isn't enough time to prepare for the fight IQ and the abilities that Volk has. It's just not. The difference is Volk can grapple and wrestle as well. The separation of skill in the grappling and wrestling is a lot smaller than the separation everywhere else. And I think that that's going to be on full display. If you look at Volk's ability to judge distance, his ability to land shots, his shot selection, his anticipation of, the things that are going to come back to him with the shots that he is selecting, and then his ability to counter on that in like a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th phase capacity, and then to switch it up completely. Now he can mix in stance changes. He can fight from southpaw, he can fight orthodox, he can fight you whether you're on southpaw or orthodox. And traditionally, he's done his best work against people who are southpaw. So that's what Islam is, a southpaw guy who shoots wrestling a lot, mostly goes for the single, goes for the double, and trips along the cage. All very effective. Can he do that against someone like Volk? It's going to be the question.
That is the question. And I like what you said, the separation and skill between Volk's stand-up and his grappling. It's very minimal. Other guys you look at, they're fantastic on the feet. You get them to the ground, they're in deep water. Would you contribute that? Obviously, Frank Hickman's there. Craig Jones is there. You were part of the camp as well. Colby's his main training partner. Has he made subtle improvements
100%.
during camp in order to prepare for Islam?
Fight to fight, and we've seen that, and he's improved. Like, he just keeps getting better, and you're like, how are you getting better? And I think it just comes back to the same mindset and work ethic that he's always had. You can tell, like, he doesn't, no one would blame that dude if he rocked up, moved around the gym, and then just bounced and was like, all right, whatever. You're like, no, he's the champ. He should be able to do what he wants. That guy is there training, coaching, and then, he might have just done like a grueling session, but if you pull him aside and ask him a question, the guy's giving you like a 45-minute seminar off to the side about what to do here and what to do there. Like, his mind for the sport and this game is next level. So it's no surprise that he keeps improving fight to fight. Like, and it just comes back to the work that's being done. Like you said, the people that you're training with, the grueling sessions you're being, put through by Joe and everyone else. Like the proof's just there. The proof's just in the pudding and in the results. Even from you look at my year last year, fight to fight, the improvements that I made and the ability that I had to sort of level up my game as a whole and round out my game. That just comes back to that. It's my coach. It's the people I have around me. It's the access to the training partners that we have at Freestyle and the sessions we're being put through. Now, it trickles down. It's from the top level of the sport with the number 1 pound for pound fighter on planet Earth, all the way down to our amateurs. You're going to see, you see that. So am I surprised that he keeps making these improvements? And did he make immense improvements across the board skill wise in this camp? 100%. And I can't wait for people to watch this fight and see how much better he got compared to when he fought Holloway.
Yeah, I think we're all, well, I mean, me and you are both true believers, and there's a lot of people out there that are, but I think a lot of people that are picking Islam for this fight, when you look at those odds, a 3-1 favorite, I think, they're in for a rude awakening, because it's like you said, if you can't get him down and hold him down, and even Volk said this, I've been listening to a bit of the interview, a few of the interviews that he's been doing. He says, he's going to get me down. There's no doubt, but can you keep me down? That's the question. And I think with, yourself and the rest of the team at Freestyle, if Islam can't keep him down, then he's the one that's in deep water on the feet.
That separation on the feet is going to be apparent. It's going to be apparent straight away.
Yeah.
Islam's best
Is
case
massive.
is in the first round.
Yeah.
Everyone's fresh and strong in the first round. Everyone's Superman in the first round, and you're dry. So if Islam can take him down in the first round, establish position, that's his best chance. After that, he's screwed. It's not happening.
Yeah.
You're not going to, don't get me wrong.
Really?
Obviously, Islam can wrestle and grapple for 25 minutes, no doubt. But like I said, he's never had to do it with adversity thrown his way. He's done it, but he's done it in scenarios where everything's going his way. He's on the top position. He is getting the takedowns. He's not experiencing much resistance. Okay, shoot. Do you know, like, people don't get, and someone, you know, who's obviously, like, as much work as I've done to round up my skill set, and like, I like to wrestle and grapple, it's no secret. It is very difficult to continue to take someone down and it's like trying to take them down and control them when they just get back up. Like, so many people don't actually understand, like, yeah, it's a grind for that person to get back to their feet. But if it gets to a point where you're taking them down, they're jumping, you know, they're bouncing straight back up like Volk does, and it gets to a point where you can't hold them down, and now they're even stuffing your takedowns, and you're using all that energy to shoot a takedown, you're not completing it, or you're scrambling and not getting it, you get tired, and you get tired fast. And it's very few people that can continue and push through that. And I just don't think that Islam's been in a position, especially in a high stakes fight where it's for your world titles on the line, where he's been put in a scenario like that, where it's like, oh my, yeah, like, you're about to lose, you need to do something. I don't think he's been put in that position yet. So I can't speak on the fact that he'd be able to, you know, do that and push through that. We've seen Volk in that position. We've seen him with Ortega on top of him, and the lights are dimming, like he's spoken about.
Yes.
It's as bad as it can get. It's worst case scenario, and he still pushed through.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that, I mean, yourself, you're probably the best person to give that sort of perspective, being in the training room with him. You know, on the outside, we can all speculate as fans, but it's good to hear a perspective on the inside. And I think the point you alluded to earlier is that he's been in these positions before, Islam hasn't. So, I mean, if you want to test your mettle, coming from Dagestan, I know it's a tough place to come from. Well, come to the RAC Arena in Perth and test your mettle there, because there is not going to be one person that's not going to be rooting for Volk other than Islam's team in that building. So do you think this fight is being underpromoted? There's been complaints that it's not getting the, I guess, the traffic or the respect that it deserves. For me personally, I mean, me and you are inside the MMA loop. I haven't been able to stop thinking about this fight since it got announced, but I think there are a few complaints about, obviously, the power plate competition or power slap contest taking precedence over this fight, and then Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler gets announced. Do you think it takes away from the prestige of this fight, or do you think that it still holds a lot of weight, especially here in Australia?
Like, especially now in Fight Week, you can sort of see the telling signs of that. You know, go on YouTube and look at the embedded numbers and look at
it's all coming
like
out.
Like,
yeah,
pay attention to, you know, people probably just don't really understand things and how to sort of gauge things. Like, go on the UFC socials, go on the Instagram and stuff like that. Go over to the reels that they're putting up. Click on the little tab and look at the views that these things are getting. You know, these things are trending everywhere. It's all over my feed, everywhere. You know, so it's definitely trekking in a massive way. And this fight, I think a lot of people are going to be drawn to this fight that aren't even sort of immensely invested into the sport like we are, because you know, whenever you see something get thrown together and it's like the number one and number two guys fighting, or, you know, two champions fighting, and these guys are on the pound for pound list, like, I don't know about you, but whenever that's in any capacity, like growing up watching boxing, whenever there was a champion fighting another champion, you're watching that shit. Like, you want to see, you want to know, you want to know the answer to that question, whether you're
totally
myself, who's invested into the sport, competes in it, is an athlete in the sport, or, you know, my mum is hyped up. She doesn't follow MMA outside of when I fight, but she's hyped up about this fight. She wants to know the answer to that question. You know what I mean? Like, there's the sort of vibe across everywhere is that it's trending in a big way. So I definitely don't feel like it's been under promoted. I just feel like there's some fights that you can just sort of let flow organically, because, you know, you were never going to get these two guys sitting here and trash talking each other and doing like, you know, they're going to do a press conference, but you're not going to see these guys go back and forth like Colby and Masvidal, and like, you know, Islam's a a super respectful
Mm.
dude. Like, and for the most part, like he's never is, even that when the times when he has gone back and forth with people, there's no like sort of malice behind it. It's just funny banter, really. And then with Volk, Volk's like
Mm.
just so laid back, cool and calm and collected, and how he is in front of the cameras is exactly how he is when he's on front of the cameras. Like just a chill dude, just like the world's the nicest person, like super nice, like annoyingly nice.
He is the man. I mean, no one's a bigger Volk fan than me. I tell you what, it's funny because I think the last time I saw him, I said, "Hey, bro, can I get a photo?" And he's like, "Yeah, but you've had like
Get
2
another
photos beforehand at the other cuts." And I'm like, "Yeah, can I get another one?" Let's get another one, man. Shucks. No, he's awesome. Well, my man, unfortunately, you and I won't be there, but we will be watching. Just before we sign off, what's a perfect year look like for you? As far as, obviously not off to a great start, but moving forward, how many times you want to fight this year? And essentially, do you see yourself getting a Dana White Contender Series shot or even a shot at the UFC?
2023
Give us
for
a
me. I
timeline.
want
What's a
4
perfect
fights
year look
again
like?
this year. Yeah, I want 4. I mean, there's no reason why I
4.
wouldn't be able to pull that off. But yeah, I mean, ideally, I go and defend my belt in May, and then after that, I sit down with Joel and that and see what the go is. Like, I believe myself with a win and a defense of my belt, especially against another top caliber featherweight, I think that warrants a next step. Because then that puts me on a 5-fight win streak. My record's 12-5. Especially if I get a finish, that leaves me, that leaves me on a 5-fight win streak with 4 finishes. I'm number 1 featherweight in the region, number 1 pound for pound in the region. I got 2 Australian titles. It puts me in a really good spot. If I need to fight again regionally, of course, I'll want to fight straight away. So if there's like a July card or end of June, early July card or whatever they're going to do date wise, I want to be on that card. My plan is just to do what I did last year. I just want to fight, string them together back to back, and then take the opportunities as they're presented to me. So if I go out there in May and do my job, put away another one of these featherweights, and then I get a call up for the UFC or the Contender Series or whatever the case is, obviously, that's going to be the next step we take. But ideally, by the end of the year, at the absolute latest, I'm fighting in the UFC.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, the champ has spoken. Brother, thank you so much for joining us. I tell you what, we've been talking about this for almost a year now. We finally did it.
Not at all. We'll do this a bunch of times.
Although it's the first time,
but the
I'm
next
sure it
time
won't be the last.
The next time we're doing it in person.
Absolutely.
The next time
we'll do a fight companion.
I need to be there.
In person. You need to be here. You're coming in. All right, my bro. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. And all the best to you and the team at Freestyle this weekend. Thank you, brother. See you soon.